Okay, now I'm turning it live.
From Los Angeles, California, this is Now Daily with Robert Crawford, uncovering real stories worth sharing. Join the talk at nowdaily.com
So is it like when you talk,
/show.
it shows you, and then when I talk, it shows me, or it shows both
Welcome
all
to
the
Now
time?
Daily. We changed the screens right now, but this is Robert Crawford. I'm here with Now Daily. We're here talking tonight. Our topic is the future proofs past, because of some interesting information we found out about the Notre Dame fire that happened in Paris today. I'm here with my co-host Julia Song. Julia is going to be really kind of taking command tonight. So Julia, what are your thoughts? What's going on in the now?
So I'm kind of like, I have my thoughts all rambled in my head, but I guess I'll try to make sense of it. I think the most important thing to consider right now is what is the actual cost of Macron really coming out and saying that this is a hate crime. I think that it was very early on that they said it was possible that this was a construction accident, but the fire hadn't even been put out by the time that they said it was a construction accident. So it just felt like it was a PR thing where they were trying to make sure that the narrative didn't come out that it was a hate crime. And it is possible that it was. I think that their police is not the most reliable police in the world. We have to really realize what it would mean for him to come out publicly and say that the price of his policies were to have, France, one of France's biggest, most important monuments to be burned down. I think that cathedral is, I think, to the world, probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, symbols of Christianity. And to have that burned down because of his policies, I think that would be a big price that he cannot afford to pay right now.
So you think it's really more about Macron, where Macron, do you think he's blaming a specific group? I've heard rumors that like a satanic group has been like going around destroying churches within the last few weeks. Have you heard about this?
No, I think that what he's doing is that he's controlling the narrative and saying that, telling everybody to say that this was a construction accident. When we actually look at what has been going on in France, where I think up to 100 churches have been burned down or desecrated or vandalized in the past few days, and we realized that this is probably no accident. There was Laura Loomer posted news about this, where there was a woman that was arrested recently about I think, well, I don't remember what she was doing, but I think the whole plan was to do something to the cathedral. So she was arrested, I think, about a couple of days ago, and then now we have the cathedral on fire. I think that to blame it on a construction accident when you have had a history of over 100 churches in France and I think in Europe overall being burned down and vandalized, I think it's just he's trying to control the narrative, because if he says this is a hate crime that came out of my immigration policies because I just let everybody in, and then the cultures clashed. I don't think he can afford that. I think a lot of people are trying to get him to resign, and to say that one of his biggest globalist policies was a mistake is probably too much for him right now.
Okay, so you think he's trying to just get in front of it because of the globalist policies?
Yeah,
do we know like really what happened yet, or is it just a fire and we pretty much know nothing more than that?
No, we don't, and I think we never will. I think it'll be like the biggest thing, or the some of these other terror attacks where we don't actually know what's been going on. I mean, you look at the Vegas. The guy was a government contractor. His girlfriend was an FBI informant. The shooter in Orlando, him and his father were FBI informants. The terrorist that orchestrated the Boston attack, he was an FBI informant. And all of this information has been kept under wraps, and we have not found reasonable, answers to these terror attacks, because they're trying to cover up the narrative. And I think that's exactly what Macron was going to do. He's going to cover it up because I don't think he can afford to tell the truth.
So a lot of people don't even realize that Macron is a Rothschild puppet, right? I mean, he worked for them in the banks. He was basically put into power, and France, ever since he got in, France has just been going nuts. Um, so what do you think is going to happen with France, like moving forward? Are they going to go more towards Macron socialist policies? Or are they? I mean, they were really the ones that created the revolution, right? They kind of revolutionized Europe in the past. Do you think we're going to see something like that again? We're seeing the yellow vest, but it's not really accomplishing anything.
I think that this actually was a little bit farther than he would have liked for it to have gone. I think the French people are not going to fall for it. He's going to say that it was a construction spark, but come on, like, this is Easter. That church is full all the time, but this is Easter week. It was full. It was shoulder to shoulder, packed with people, and they were trying to renovate it at the same time of Easter week. Just stop. Just stop. I don't think the French people are gonna fall for it, and he's just gonna look like a liar, and he's just gonna look like a failure. And maybe that's going to revive the Yellow Vest movement. Maybe it's going to put the people against him. I don't really think, honestly, that impeachment is a good solution, but I do think that he needs to get out one way or another. And the next time that people vote, I think he has 3 years, right? 3 years left, maybe. I think next time
I
people
think it's
vote,
what, 5 years in France for the term. I'm not sure.
I don't know, but people will vote for a totally different candidate. And I think that the time of globalism in Europe is just, it has its days counted.
I don't know. I think it could go either way. I think the people probably will vote that way, but then they've immigrated so many people and are probably giving them rights to vote too. So, that's really their whole plan is replace the population and get them to vote. That's why I think there's a big debate on illegal immigration is because I mean, you could say that it's a conspiracy theory until a few weeks ago when they actually put a bill on the House floor to allow illegal aliens to vote, right? I think at that point you realize, okay, that's the scheme. They want to put illegal aliens in these places because they know they can control the vote. I mean, look at everything that's coming out with Project Veritas with like the voter fraud. Have you seen this where they've discovered certain people that were registered in 2 states, and when they actually talked to them, they've only voted in 1? So what makes us think that France isn't even worse? Why? I would imagine the EU and the Rothschild family have France on lockdown, so it doesn't really matter what the people think.
I think that it does a little bit, but we have to be really careful with how we move forward and the actions that we take. For example, every single thing, especially in that area, has to be really, I guess, organized in a way that it works out for the people in the end. For example, socialism in Brazil, the way that things worked out, it made sense. Like, we made it happen. But in Venezuela, it wasn't the same. So if they can get together in a way that it works out and the people actually gets together with strength to, renounce the globalist policies, I think that they still have a shot. We'll see what happens with Brexit. We'll see what happens with Germany. I think the Germany woman, I get, my blood boils when I talk about it.
Oh, Angela Merkel?
Yeah, I'm getting rashes. That woman, she and Macron were like they basically destroyed Europe together. And I think that if Britain can get out
Well,
of
have you
it,
seen that picture where it's like her, Melissa May from England, and then I think there's some other third like Eastern European country where like all 3 of the female leaders were in the same picture together when they were like 12 years old, 10 years old?
no.
Oh yeah, let me try to pull this up. Yeah, keep talking. I'll try to pull that up because that was crazy.
Keep talking. um. So, your point about illegal immigration, when it comes to the U.S., and I feel like a lot of people, they don't care as much about world politics. They care about U.S. politics, whatever. But when it comes to the U.S., we have to realize that all these things are, they have power and they influence our politics. And the what they're trying to do here is they're trying to implement a state of welfare. When they bring these people over, they're trying to keep them enslaved to a small amount of welfare so that they can keep getting votes. But their policies are terrible for economy. They raise up inflation, and the amount of welfare that these people get eventually becomes, irrelevant. But they feel like they have to keep getting it anyway because it's their only manner to survive. They can't get jobs in other ways because the economy sucks. So it's just something that people need to realize long term, and they don't. I was in a podcast today, and let me know when you pull the picture up.
Oh, I got it up. It's crazy. I don't know if you can see it, but it's hard to tell whether it's real or not. I would really have to dig into a little further, but it definitely looks like the three of them.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's really weird that, for example, everybody in Hollywood knows each other and went to school with each other. But
Or like every president is somehow like related to one of the kings of England.
yeah, that's why they should pick me as a president.
How do we know you're not related?
True, I probably am. I probably am. That's a good one.
Maybe
Yeah.
you're pulling a fast one on all of us. You're like the double agent, getting in as like a normal person, but really your lineage. It's all about the bloodlines.
No, everybody asks me that, but I'm pretty sure that the kings of England haven't gotten that far down south.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess the King of England. But okay, so let's go back to France. So France has had probably the most terrorist attacks within the past 2 years of any other country I could think of. At least like major third world or first world country. I guess I don't even know what that term means anymore. But do you think that's going to continue and get worse?
Well, let's take a moment and thank God for President Trump because his policies kept us from becoming or getting to that stage. Imagine if Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders or whatever had gotten the presidency, we would be having these attacks here all the time. I mean, we still have them to a smaller extent. There's all these communities that have been brought here that haven't really uh, actually merged with our culture. They're just living amongst themselves, and I find that so dangerous and so difficult to like comprehend. Why would anybody do that? They come here and they just stay like they stick with their own, and they don't try to branch out. They have the Somali
Yeah, they don't assimilate.
neighborhoods. They don't assimilate at all. So I think that that's very dangerous.
I
And
think I
having
see that more when they come over as like a large group, but when individuals make the decision to come here, it seems like they want to assimilate. Like you're a good
it's
example of that. Like you came over and you wanted to assimilate into the country, not. Well, I guess you didn't. I don't know. I don't know much about the Brazil culture, but it's probably a little more similar than the Middle Eastern culture.
Well, I'm very smart. First of all, I'm extremely intelligent, and that's one thing
Super
that we
humble
should
too.
always.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we have to keep it real. But I was given the chance multiple times to join the Brazilian community, to go to the Brazilian events, to be around Brazilian people, and that's something that we realize, even with the Hispanic culture, is that not that Brazilian is Hispanic culture, but it's similar. That you have when you come here, you have a decision that you have to make. For example, my mother, when she came to visit, she had I put on the TV a Brazilian channel for her to watch, and because it felt so familiar, that was the only channel that she wanted to watch. She didn't learn English, she didn't learn other things, she didn't learn the culture because she was focused on that Brazilian channel. So sometimes we're so focused on what's going on and feeling at home that we don't feel like this country is our home. And I think that that's a dangerous mindset right there. And to bring a lot of people, a lot of groups and refugees, like it would have happened if Hillary would have won, that would have been very difficult for our country.
Yeah, I get your point, and I definitely see that in LA, right? There's different areas of town here where you have immigrants that didn't want to assimilate, and you go into it and it's like you're in a foreign country. They're speaking a different language. Even the signs for all the stores are in a different language. And I guess it's a free country, that's fine, but I would imagine it just makes their lives harder, because now you only have a small group of people, but you never get to expand out and really take advantage of what's around them.
Yeah, and I mean, imagine having all these thoughts in your head that you don't really know how to elaborate. When I moved here, my English wasn't as good as it is today, but I immersed myself in the culture to the point where I was like, all right, I have all these thoughts and now I know how to express them. I feel like if you're focusing so much in your own culture, you would have less of a career potential or an economic potential because you don't know how to excel in the American culture, and that is a problem. And then it brings us back to the lower income communities and the communities who don't assimilate and the communities who are voting Democrat and they're being enslaved by a welfare state. So we have to really understand what's happening with these communities on a on case basis and figure out how we can make sure that they join America in a more efficient way and become part of this country the way that they're supposed to, versus just being marginalized and being bought over by Democrats.
Well, yeah, I mean, we definitely know that there's political players that want to use them basically as pawns on the chessboard. Even though they say they really care about them. I mean, Cher's a great example. How hypocritical was her tweets this week when she basically said, we have enough problems in LA already. Don't send any more illegal immigrants here. But then 2 years ago, there was a tweet saying we'd even take some in our own house. So it's like, were they just playing with us? Or, it seems like they were just saying it just to kind of make the public think that they're nice and caring. But when push comes to shove, they're really the opposite.
Yeah, yeah, that was really intense. And that, adds to my point of what exactly are they doing? Are they just vouching for socialism because they're stupid, or are they vouching for socialism because they're evil and they want the power? I think that I made a tweet about this sometime this week where I talked about socialism actually not being the end goal of anybody. They don't want socialism. I feel like socialism is just a tool that they're using to implement globalism. They don't care about socialism. If this was about socialism, we would see isolated pockets of socialism in the world. We wouldn't see every single country right now half and half divided with socialist and extremely radical left policies. I mean, the policies that are being introduced to Congress today were unthinkable just 10 years ago. Just 10 years ago, they were unthinkable. And so we have all these crazy ideas, and the countries being divided all over the world. This is a worldwide effort to divide us and to conquer us. And they're using socialism as a tool, but I don't think they want to implement it in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it's really about control. And the interesting thing is, we are already living in a socialist country. I don't understand why people think we're in a capitalist country. I mean, go through the tenets of communism. The number one most important thing is a central bank, and the number two thing is a progressive income tax. That's communism. That's like the core of communism. We already have it. But then everyone blames capitalism. So do you think it's really because of the media's portray of the system of blaming capitalism because they want more power that's really causing everyone to think that capitalism's bad, or at least a good majority of younger people? Or is it really because of their life experiences?
I think that the media is evil, and I think that the people are, that's what they're doing actually with. But I'm gonna get to that in a moment. I have like all these things in my head that I have to talk first. Well, people use like Scandinavia and northern European countries as an example of like socialism. Socialism works because they have so many social programs. First of all, they're much smaller as a They have a very, like, I don't know the word for it. This is me not being American enough, but they have an homogenous culture. They have huge amounts of taxes that they pay. Their housings, their housing prices are huge and pretty much unaffordable. And they, all these things going on, they can't sustain themselves forever. We have $21 trillion in debt in this country, and we have to really realize what is the weight of this debt on our
I just read
economy.
today on Drudge Report that over 50 million people paid $0 in taxes this year, or less.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Now, let's say that I think there's like 160 million, give or take, taxpayers in the United States. So you're talking about 20%.
Yeah. Yeah, people need to realize that things aren't free. But going back to your point about why people believe in this, well, we have to realize that school boards, they're the ones that pick the curriculum for kids to in the school districts, and these are elected positions. And
Well,
as
not
I'm so
even though,
involved,
but they're picking things because of the federal guidelines because they want the federal money.
that too, but also these positions, as I'm very involved with local politics, they are Democrats are putting a lot of money towards winning school board elections. They're playing the long-term game because they know that if they indoctrinate kids long enough, they can have in 4 or 5 years a Democrat voter. And they're trying to lower the age to 16, so all they have to do is indoctrinate them long enough so that they will have. And it's not about, it's simple things. It's about picking a book versus the other. One book is neutral, one book is more to the right, one book is more to the left, and they pick the one that's more to the left. They know they have these guidelines, they have pac money, they have all these things being decided for them that they have to introduce as they become elected as school board members. And Democrats are putting a lot of money into these elections. And so you have to really get to know who is in your school board, who is part of that, because your kids are, they're in danger of being indoctrinated. I was talking to this lady the other day, I think a couple of days ago, and she was telling me that her kid was given an additional class called the leadership class, which was basically just a cover for socialist and liberal ideas. And that her kid was learning about abortions being okay and all kinds of queer things that she was not okay with her kid learning. But who put that curriculum there was the school board.
Yeah, but again, I think the local ones are just going off of a larger plan. I mean, we see that with city planning and Agenda 21 mainly. Agenda 21, which is now Agenda 30, which has been signed on by our country and like 156 others with the UN. They have guidelines for the cities. So basically they said, okay, we don't have the presidency in our pocket anymore. We're going around to the cities. And the cities are saying, no, you can't, we're trying to phase out single family homes. They want to build multifamily. And they want to build these mixed use, very small 400, 600 square feet apartments. That's like the Agenda 20, or Agenda 2030 plan. So it would make sense. It's the same agenda in the school system. And I think it trickles down from more the federal level, which is why it was an interesting idea to get rid of the Department of Education with the Fed, that at least Trump was saying in his campaign, which I kind of agreed with. Because really right now the Department of Education does two things. It creates this curriculum that they spread throughout, and then it divvies out money for people that go for it and basically abide by the rules. And then it gives out student loan money. And everyone's complaining about college being so expensive. The problem is college started getting really expensive when the federal government took over the loans, and they said, we're going to do all the loans, we're just going to give them out, we're going to charge interest, but we're going to give them to anyone. They don't even really need to qualify, they don't have to put up much money, we're just going to give them out to anyone that wants to go to college, which inflated the prices because the colleges got smart and they said, well, if they're going to write a blank check, we might as well just charge whatever we want for tuition.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that all of the systems, healthcare and school systems, they should all be privatized. I don't think the government is supposed to, I guess, monitor a little bit to make sure that the free market doesn't eat itself up. But it's not supposed to be the institution that rules over every single thing. What does the government know about healthcare? What does the government know about education? Education should be something that people get to decide on a local basis. I don't think it just boils my blood, to be honest. And these Democrats that are talking about, I think it's very easy to talk about free stuff,
Writing's
free
not that.
healthcare, free education. But I actually had those things. I actually had free healthcare. I actually had free education. And you spend hours and hours and hours overnight in a line with hundreds of people waiting outside to get into the hospital. And when you do get into the hospital, you don't even have an IV fluid bag because they don't have that. They can afford that. The hospital is in terrible condition, terrible sanitary conditions. The schools don't have roofs. They don't have teachers. They don't have anything. And that's because every time you involve the government on something and you try to make it free, it's never free. It comes with a cost and it's terrible quality. And that's why you get what we're getting today. It is a youth that thinks that socialism is okay as an ideology, and it's not. And I hope that we don't see a socialist president within the next 20 years or so, but I think we might.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working on setting up an interview with this UFC doctor to discuss the problems with just the medical side, because the government's getting their hands involved. You have Bernie Sanders and pretty much almost every Democrat running for president saying that they want to completely have Medicare for all, which would be a completely socialist system. I mean, this is a really dangerous idea because who gets to decide whether you live or die? That those are the choices you're going to make. You could say, okay, I can't afford this bill, or it puts me, into debt, and I may have to declare bankruptcy, but at least when you go to the hospital, they'll take care of you. What if you're on an extended period of time and Medicare has these guidelines that say, hey, we got to cut him off? Oh, he's been in a coma for 10 days. That's the cutoff, so we're just going to knock him out.
Plus, not only that, but who's going to pay the bill, right? As a consumer, if Big Pharma I go to the hospital and Big Pharma tries to sell me $100 Advil, I can say as a consumer, I'm not going to pay for that. I'm going to go without my Advil because it's just too expensive. But if the government is actually paying the bill and we're not seeing anything, they're probably going to charge the government $1,000 for that Advil. And I'm not, as a consumer, I'm not going to get to see where that money is going to go to, and the government's going to pay that bill anyway because who puts people in government is Big Pharma. Big Pharma is funding the congressional and the Senate candidates to be there. So it's just a never-ending cycle of corruption, and people need to understand that big government equals big corruption and big bureaucracy. It does not mean that it becomes more efficient. It's just all these things, bureaucracy and corruption, they're intrinsic to the government. As you make it bigger, these things they grow, and so you need to make it more efficient. You don't need to make it bigger.
Well, yeah, again, that's a perfect example of everyone blaming capitalism for a problem government created. The healthcare right now is really expensive, and we can all agree on the problem. The problem is right now healthcare is way too expensive in the U.S. for most people, just about everyone. Some people can afford it and they have insurance. Others get it through their employer, so they don't really care about the problem. Try leaving that job and then seeing what happens. But the problem is healthcare is really expensive. And it's not like the doctors are making 90% of the money. The doctors are making a fraction of this money. Most of it's going to the insurance companies, but it's the government regulations that create all the issues because they make it so difficult to come out and bring a drug to market that all the drugs that do come to market have to charge to make back the billions of dollars they put in and the 10, 20, 30 years plus to develop that. The doctors are the same way. The doctors had to pay for, because it's mandated to go to all these different classes, right? Now you could say, oh, well, I want my doctor to go to these classes, but when you mandate it, you're basically now saying every doctor has to pay for specific fees to take standardized tests. They have to pay for all their college courses. They have to go into debt. They have to intern. So by the time they get out of it, if they want to open up their own practice, then they have a bunch of other regulations. They have to get their facilities approved. They have to get their licensing. They have to have business insurance, all these different regulations. So for them to just open up a practice, an individual doctor to open up one office, is costing them probably over $1 million in 10 to 12, 15 years to go through all this to make sure that happens. So of course they're going to have to charge more, and then you have people in the middle siphoning it out. So yeah, you're right. The government created just about all the problems. If there was less government, sure, you may have some bad doctors, right? But isn't it on the individual to kind of vet your doctor and make sure they're not some crazy kook that like never went to school and basically is practice on fried chicken?
I think you need to really let the consumer choose. I think that the government can regulate certain practices and making sure that people are not acting predatorial. But for example, look at me. I am a business major, and I was required to take history. I was required to take philosophy. I was required to take astronomy. I was required to take 2 or 3 biology classes. So why do you want your business major to know about astronomy? And most of all, you can say, oh, it's best to have a more intelligent individual. These are not institutions that are trying to make knowledge last in your head. They're just trying to give you enough information so that you can pass a test, and they can move you over to the next step, the next charging step. So with these doctors, it's the same thing. If you want a doctor that takes care of your, let's say your heart, why do you want them to go through all kinds of classes with all kinds of things, right? If we made medicine more focused and we allowed people to, just do and learn what they have to learn, I don't think college is for everyone. I think that people need to have a lot of these classes, like what I'm having, what I'm doing. There's, very few classes they're actually useful for my degree. I could have had those classes in high school and be done with it. I didn't have to go to college to have like 2 or 3 classes that are actually going to be useful in my career. I didn't have to. I'm, spending all this thousands and thousands of dollars on a
and
degree.
And a business degree is somewhat useful in like, political science or gender studies or all these different degrees that really have no like real world value.
Absolutely. So these are things that people can learn in school. I don't think that they should be going to college for it. I think that we need to really reevaluate and revamp a lot of our systems, the educational system, the immigration system, the justice system. I don't know why we're here today. It just blows my mind.
Well, I mean, they reformed the justice system, but it really didn't do much. The problem with the justice system is a lot of justice happens outside the justice system. Like I read a stat the other week. You know about asset forfeiture? Where asset forfeiture.
I knew you're gonna put me in this
Okay.
spot 1,000 times.
Okay. Well, asset forfeiture is basically cops are pulling people over or stopping them and saying, oh, you have a bag of $10,000. We're going to say that this money was involved with a crime and we're going to steal it from you. They've even been known to steal computers, pretty much anything of value. Cops are stealing. Now you may say, oh, it's just the bad apples. But the statistic is, last year with asset forfeiture, there was more wealth stolen by the police with asset forfeiture than all robberies combined in the U.S.
Oh, well, I think you need to put that stats up on the screen so people can know where it's coming from. But I think that, there is a difference when the government becomes really big. There is a difference with, what kind of the role of law enforcement, right? The role of law enforcement within the community, it's very important. However, as the government becomes more tyrannical, the good people tend to, just go their way, or sometimes even in Brazil they just die because the criminals have better, bigger guns, and they're not afraid of anything, and they're overpowering the police officers. So the police officers, the good ones that want to do their jobs, they just die. And so you have a lot of bad apples. You also have a lot of people who just want to, they don't see another way to provide to their family. And I think that's what we're seeing in Venezuela. People are saying the military should actually go against Maduro, but the military is never going to do that, because the only way that they have to provide to their families is to actually go through, be a part of the system, the government system. If they try to go off on their own, they're going to be, in hunger, facing famine, and them and their families, if they're not, chased down and actually pursued and just killed by the government. So I think that you have to, balance out what is the good for our community. And I think that going towards a system of smaller government, I think it's best for anyone and everyone, including the police force and all other people. It brings more back the sense of village policing, the good guys. But we also have a lot of crime happening with this unvetted immigration, and it's just out of control. I think we need more police officers than ever, and we shouldn't need as many.
I don't know. See, okay, so I have it up on screen. It's from the Washington Post. You can believe it or not, but I mean, the most people are going to believe the mainstream. Law enforcement took more stuff from people than burglars did last year. And it shows that the forfeiture from police that was seized was over $5 billion, where burglary were under $4 billion. So to me, that's pretty striking. So when you say, hey, we need more cops than ever to fight the criminals and illegals, both of those options are bad. And I kind of disagree. I mean, everyone thinks cops are here to protect and serve. And when you go against cops and you say, well, I don't know if they're great, I don't really like them, everyone starts flipping out. It's like, they're here to save our lives. But the courts have ruled over and over again. I could pull them up. So many court rulings have said the police have no legal responsibility to protect or serve you. They're there to only enforce the laws after the fact. So any cop, if you think that there's like some shootout situation and he's going to come and rescue you, he may, but he's really acting on his own self, because the law says he really doesn't have to do that. He should really just kind of sit back and then write the report when the situation's finished.
And that's when we go back to the justice system reform, right? I feel like, and we go back to the village police officer, the whole concept of the guy that protects others, that steps up and defends society. And why I'm saying that we need more cops is that because we're having such a huge amount of criminality happening. We have such a huge amount of cops even getting killed, that it's
actually, I think overall crime's down, but the media really plays it up.
Compare it to, like, I'm comparing to.
Yeah, it's down
from 50 years ago.
It's down significantly, like more than 50%.
Well, I have to look into that, but I feel like as a rule, the majority of the situations, the more we increase as a population, the more we have things like criminality increasing. So
sure,
this
it's
is
always
what I'm
a percentage, right?
Yeah, however, the concept of the cop that protects the society and that protects the people is being lost, because the state is overruling that institution to a point where if somebody tries to do something, they go through all the issues of the bureaucratic process, right? If they try to raise their gun to save a life, they might lose their jobs, they might go to jail. It's just, I'm not saying that they're right or they're wrong,
but I think what we're seeing is the
institution itself has been corrupted.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. So there's definitely a corruption within the system. My theory and what I've seen work is privatize the police. And everyone says I'm crazy, but there's actually been some cities that have done that recently. I think there's definitely one in Texas. They saw crime drop down drastically. The budget to actually police things dropped down. Here's a real world example.
I agree with that.
So I door
everything.
knock a lot, right? That's my business. I'm in real estate. If you want to learn more, go to wearerealty.com. You could find places in Southern California. But I was door knocking and talking to a bunch of neighbors in Santa Monica one day. And they were talking to me for 45 minutes, an hour about the neighborhood. And they said for years they had troubles with break-ins. And they would call the police and it never got any better. And then the whole neighborhood got together and they hired the security service, like ADP, I think it was. And now they have security guards that just private security that they pay for to patrol the streets. And they said since that has been going on, it's basically stopped the vast majority of the crime. So that's just one simple example. But when we go back to, okay, everyone says, well, maybe there's just some bad apples in the barrel, right? You don't throw away the whole barrel for some bad police officers. Maybe it's the bad ones doing the asset forfeiting. But my whole point of view is it's all about accountability, even the good ones. When someone does something wrong in the government, then you have that layer of bureaucracy. They got to go through months of hearings. I mean, it takes forever to get someone fired. It's very rare. You have people that are kind of sympathetic to their cause because it's usually cops or people within that division that's actually looking into the situation anyway, so a lot of people get off with it. Where if it was privatized, if someone does something wrong, your vote is immediate, right? You would stop paying. If ADP screwed up and let's say they broke into someone's house because they got a wrong call and they got the address wrong, what do you think would happen? Immediately the next day, the neighbors would get together and say, hey, you guys are fired. You guys sucked. You did a horrible job.
Yeah, I think that it all goes down to smaller government. I think that, when I've seen that from my own experience, I do believe that the police is extremely important to keep us from a state of anarchy. But we can bring policing to, same as education, same as healthcare, we can bring it to a private, local level instead of making it such a huge thing. Because when it comes down to it, for example, and this I'm going to, I guess, explain it a little bit. The police, in the end, they have to protect the interests of the state because they're hired by the state, right? They aren't hired by Julie. They aren't hired by anybody else. So if Julie does something that the state may perceive as bad, then they have to defend the state. Now, this doesn't mean that all officers are going to do that. However, when the good ones quit, they hire people who are willing to do anything because the system, they want to put a plate of food on their table. They want to do whatever. So then it becomes still the police against the people, but now the police is made up of all kinds of individuals. So I think that you need to train the police better. I think there's a lot of people that aren't as well trained, and this is just me talking out of my ass. But and then you also have to make sure that the community understands the value of that individual doing that. I feel like a lot of people don't understand why is it important to be a police officer, to have a police officer around. And it takes away from that village policing where people were kind and nice to the officers and they were kind and nice back. For example, I had an encounter with an officer and he was extremely rude to me, but I think that the reason behind it was because I was behind the wheel of the car. He didn't know who I was and he was afraid for his life. So imagine
that's what they always say, but they're the aggressors, right? They're the ones wearing a gun, and then they're scared that you may or may not have a gun. How many people have they killed by accident because they reached for something and they didn't have a gun, but they freaked out and they started shooting?
But that is a state of life that you just get into. So when I was in Brazil, I had enough run into people who could have done something to me that I was in pretty much a panic state all the time. I was in an adrenaline state all the time. When I moved here, it took forever for me to calm that down and realize that I wasn't in danger. So I feel like they sometimes let that get into their head, and they need some kind of, therapy, the government needs to provide some kind of
Well, the
classes
biggest
and
thing you
therapy
just
and stuff
mentioned,
for
though,
them.
was he pulled you over, right? And I've listened to so many attorneys, I've talked to some personally that are telling me that when you really understand how the law works, the transportation laws only apply to commercial activity. So the first question is, why was he pulling you over, right? Was he pulling you over because he thought you were speeding or ran a red light or a stop sign or didn't use your turn signal or any other one of these BS excuses? I have a lot of attorneys saying that that's fraud. That unless you were driving for Uber or a truck or doing some type of commercial transportation, they have no right to pull you over. They can't even enforce the speed limit.
Well, that's something they're probably gonna have to look into, because I might need to say that whenever I get in trouble. But it really comes down to big government, and what is the government turning these institutions to? These institutions, including politics. Look at my belief of politics is a small. If you think about it, back in the day, there was the think about Greece, right? All these different countries, and Rome. People would gather in the streets. They would gather in the plazas, whatever, and somebody, an older fellow, a wiser fellow that the community considered very knowledgeable, would go up and would speak to the people, and the people would be like, "Yo, you know what? I think this guy is really good. We know this guy. Let him represent us in some issues." However, nowadays politics has become this huge thing, this huge bureaucracy, and the whole system is just that. So the big government is killing all of our institutions one by one.
Yeah, and again, they've just gotten it bloated. So if I'm right on these transportation laws, somehow they have defrauded the police, because the police don't really know law, right? They're given very basic education in it. They're not lawyers, they're not attorneys. They basically brainwashed them into thinking some things are law. I mean, Joe Bannister, I think I mentioned him to you, and I sent you over that video, Freedom to Fascism. I don't know if you watched that, but anyone watching this, if you haven't seen it, you should definitely go see it. Joe Bannister and a few other people, Sherry Jackson's one of them, were working for the IRS. Joe is an interesting case. I want to get him on the show because he was literally an officer arresting people for not paying taxes. And then he spent 2 years because a few people kept mentioning to him there is no law for personal income tax, that you have to file it. Spent 2 years and could not find a law. Once he brought it up to his superiors, they asked for his resignation. They then went, and for like 10, 15 years, he was tied up in court battles because they were suing him for not filing taxes. They were suing him for clients, advising his clients. He ended up winning every lawsuit, and all they had to do in the lawsuit was present the law that required a personal income tax to be filed. So when you're talking
Yeah,
about big government, it's like our laws are actually not even that big. The problem is they're defrauding everyone. They're committing fraud on this massive scale and brainwashing everyone to believe that things are laws, which they're not. I mean, think about it. Income tax. Today is tax day. Okay? I was at the post office. People were going mad to try to get their envelopes in by the end of the day so they didn't get a fine from the IRS. But if the personal tax was a requirement, why didn't any of us receive a notice? I never received an invoice, a notice to file, nothing.
yeah. I was just in this convention the other day, and I'm going to just use this as an example. I was in this convention, this political convention, the other day, and it was funny because they had the most simplest thing of all. If the chairman resides, who is going to take over? That's simple, right? And they said it took them a week reviewing 500 pages of documents, and they couldn't find one single information about what happens if the chairman resigns. So you put this simple things, and you put 500 pages of nothing, and that keeps actual real people away from politics, actual real people away from knowing what the government is doing, and that's what they do. They put us against each other. They put us to fight each other. It's us versus the police. It's black versus white. It's this versus that. When in reality, it's actually the government who's pulling all the strings, who's making everything so bureaucratic. And we have to be really careful because these things are designed to keep us away from knowledge. They're designed to keep us away from information because we don't want. What would happen if we knew all these things, right? What would happen? They probably would freak out. They would freak out. So they put 500 pages of legal blah blah blah, and we never look into it. Who's got time to read 500 pages of that? So I think I would like to see an interview with that guy for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's there's so many laws that most of them aren't laws at all. What they are is bureaucratic rules and regulations, which is very different. And unfortunately, Congress has given some blanket statement laws that allow them to create unlimited amount of rules and regulations. That's one of the things I liked that Trump did, which was, at least put an executive order where if you want to put a new regulation, you had to remove two. So at least it kind of stopped the exponential growth for a bit, and I hope that stays. But as soon as we get someone that's pro-big government in, which could be as soon as 2 years, probably more like 6, who knows, then they're going to change that in a second. So that, to me, is a huge problem, is the rules and regulations. They came out with, talking about taxes, everyone's talking about how the tax bill affected 2018 because the Trump tax cuts took effect. And what I'm saying is it's really not much at all. It's like they gave you a little crumb. I heard most people are getting like $1,200 less. They're actually getting smaller refunds, but overall $1,200 less in taxes, which in the scheme of things is like nothing. Nothing. I mean, we should be slashing this thing where we don't have a personal income tax. Why do we need it? Just have a flat tax. They tax us on income. So that when we first get the money, they tax us. And then when we go to the store to buy food, they tax us again, right? And then to cook that food, they tax us on all the utilities that we use to cook that food and on the ground that we're standing on to eat that food. So it's like perpetual. Then any leftover money after all that we need to survive, we can invest it, but if we make any money out of that money, they tax it again.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's theft. But yeah,
okay, so if it's theft, right now we have an involuntary system, right? Where they basically say, you're going to pay us this money owed, or we're going to come with guns and put you in a cage. So right now it's pretty involuntary. So if we were to move in a theoretical fantasy world to a fully voluntary system, what do you think would happen?
That's what I'm going to run on. I'm actually going to run on that. That is a great idea. And I've had that idea before you told me about it, so I don't think I stole it from you.
Yeah, you probably read one of my tweets.
No. You actually told me. There's a couple of videos ago you told me.
See?
Did you?
We got it on video.
Oh, shit. Now you can like charge me if I use your idea. But basically, just
if you get rid of the taxes, I won't charge you anything. I'll be giving you money.
No, I probably won't get rid of the taxes. I gotta get paid. But what was I saying? Well, you have to actually sign a check, right? That's what we're talking about. You sign a check to the government with the amount of taxes that. Yeah, I think that it's important, and it goes back to what I'm saying. If we actually know the cost of the things that we're paying, we as consumers can be more educated and know what we're choosing, what we're doing. I think that if I had to sign a check like thousands and thousands of
instead
dollars,
of your employer just automatically deducting it,
I would probably, get pretty upset. I'll probably get involved. But this system, again, it's designed to screw us over. It's designed to keep us away from its engines. It's designed to keep the people away from the power. And, it's not just, I keep talking about the left, but it's not just the left. The conservative establishment has as much fault as the left. If we do become a socialist, if we do become a big government like that, it's the fault of the conservative establishment as it is from the left. These people are working together to make our systems very bureaucratic, to keep people away. And I'm trying to get people to join, right? I'm trying to get people to open their eyes and join the Republican Party, join the GOP, join stuff like that. And people are like, how do I even do that? And I'm like, you just show up. What do you mean? People are so afraid to become a part of the political system. They've been told they don't belong. They've been told it's so hard.
Well, I think
Just
they have
show
two
up.
really shitty choices, and that's what gets a lot of people discouraged too. I don't really want to join the Democrats, and I don't necessarily really want to join the Republicans either. I may align with one a little more than others, and that changes too with every decade or two. But I think that's the big problem. So you have a lot of these people that are saying, I don't really relate to either of them. How do I get involved?
Yeah, and that's what you have to do. So what I'm trying to do is figuring out what party actually aligns more with my values, and I'm trying to shape it the way that I want. Like I said, the conservative establishment has just as much fault. And when I joined the GOP, there's a huge amount of it that is still the conservative establishment. So you have to be, trying to shaping as much as you can to your experience, to making it easier for people, making it more valuable. And how do you do it? You just show up. There's no other way. You just show up and you push what you believe in, and people push back and you push back again. And that's how it goes, right? The civic duty, you just become a part of it. You change the system from within. So I think that's what we need to do. We need to not be afraid of bureaucracy, not be afraid of the government. You know what? I was in this convention, and people may get upset because some people watched and some people were there, but it was like a 6-hour convention, 6 hours just sitting there going through the bureaucracy. But you know what? I'm going through it because we have to, as people, as citizens. It's enough to let other people make our decisions for us. I'm not gonna. It's too much power. I feel like people, they think that once you take yourself away from politics, you're erasing that power. You're erasing the power that you have as a human being, as a citizen. You're taking it away from the system. You're not. You're just handing that power to another man to make the decisions for you. So no, excuse me, sir, I want my power back. I just really want my power back. And you have to do it for other people, for people who can't do it. So I think it's important to get involved one way or another, because the way that they win is bureaucracy.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So going back to cops, I would be in favor if they were really here to protect our rights, right? But they're now here to protect the state. So we need to somehow change that. So I think it's a slow process in order to get that accomplished. But I guess you're right. I guess it's getting involved, making videos like this. At the very least, share this video, help build our following. What I'm seeing in the alternative community is a lot of people are working together. When I reach out for someone to try to book for them to come on here, because I've seen them on another podcast, the vast majority of them are really open to it, and we just have to find a time to get together. So I think people are open to debating, at least on our side of the aisle. Not everyone's the exact same, but I think that's the solution. What you're seeing is the fringe, which is, I would say, mainly the people that are still buying the mainstream media, that are just refusing to talk. I mean, the AOCs, right, where she's basically saying, like, you didn't stand up and get elected, so now I have the power, I'm going to run with it, and I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want. So we have these power-hungry, crazy people that have, kind of taken a stranglehold, and they're getting crazier and crazier. Like, why was Bernie on Fox? I think that was just today, right? What was up with that?
Yeah, I think that what I would love to see is that if a Republican primary, every single one of them had at least 5 candidates. At least 5 candidates. Now, oftentimes there's a guy in Durham. This guy is, oh my God, it grinds my gears. It just grinds my gears. And this guy sometimes won just because he won to become a congressman, because nobody ran against him. Not a single Republican ran against this guy, and he just won. Just like that. So if we could have more people just get involved, it's not hard. Just run. If you want to run, if you're not doing anything, you're going to school, you're trying to, become a part of your community, you give a fucking damn, just run. Just show up and tell people, you know what, I want to become a part of this. How can I help? How can I just... There's this guy, oh my God, I love him so much. Armani Salado. He is the youngest person to run for Congress, and I fully 100% endorse that guy. He's somebody who was just, he wasn't a part of the political system, but he was like, he saw all the things that were going wrong, and he's like, I want to get involved. I want to become a part of it. More people need to be doing that. More people need to be joining the system, because the system is not going everywhere. It's going to become so huge that it's going to actually end up it's going to end up choking us. I'm trying to, sometimes it's hard for me to have like all these Portuguese words in my mind and then shift them, and I'm just making excuses. Go on.
Well, I can't speak any Portuguese, so I think you're doing better than I am.
I win.
Yeah, I'm not good at languages. Not my strong suit. Pretty much anything else, but not languages.
I'm good at everything. That's just what I do.
Sure. Okay. All right. On that note, I say we end the stream here. I think pretty much came down to the same conclusion. Let's get smaller government, and what's going on in Notre Dame is pretty crazy, and we'll keep an eye out on France to see how that progresses. I'm hoping they get better, but it seems like they're just getting worse right now. But I guess you got to go through the darkest days to get to the light, right?
Yeah, I think they'll get better.
Okay. So this is Now Daily. Go ahead, share, subscribe below. Go ahead and click the bell icon so you get notified when we go live again. If you have any questions, comment below or tweet us at @TheNowDaily or follow us on Instagram @NowDaily.